Hey everybody. So I wanted to give you a little bit of feedback on your work so you'll know kind of why you got the grade you did and sort of what you could address if we get some time to do some revisions on this to either bring the grade up or just get it to portfolio quality so you'll be happier with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you kind of my quick pass through, and I'm going to try to get through as many of these as I can and as short of a video as I can. And so I'm not going to take a terribly long amount of time, but let's pop up these one at a time and just sort of talk about them. First thing I'll say is I noticed some people exported out JPEGs, but they got a little small. So let me show you something here really quick. Go File, Export. I'm going to do a PNG or JPEG or whatever and hit Save. And I'll give it these options. Make sure you set this to 300 dpi. So 72 is going to be really small. So 300 or higher. I believe we can actually make it higher if we wanted to, but that will make sure you get a better quality file once you kick that out. So starting with you, Andrew. So looking here at your file, I think it's came a long way. I think you've tightened up the range a little bit more, so it was like really contrasty, almost overly so. I think we could still consider adjusting this a little bit. So if we grabbed all of these, I went to Object, and make sure I get everything. Edit. Let's see. Edit colors. I think we could do recolor artwork. So here's the things that I notice. It's a big jump from your lightest, well, it's not your lightest light, but your primarily lightest light here of this color to this color. And so one of my things that I think kind of would help is maybe add just a touch more darkness to this. That may sort of make some of that pop a little bit. The alternative is going to be sort of lightening this just a little bit. And that sort of starts to flatten it. So that was you can see kind of the difference between the two. It kind of pulls out some of that shadow in his hair. So I actually think that this really dark shadow looks good. So let me hit cancel and redo that again, where I can edit colors, so recolor artwork. So yeah, again, like maybe drop this one just a touch to get, oh, I'm missing it. So that's way too much, but maybe somewhere in that range. And so we're getting a little bit more of you're sort of pushing our values in between there. So now this color, let's see which one this is. That's kind of alright with that one where it was, but that's not bad. So the next two colors up are probably this one and this one. So I think this is going to be no, I'm actually alright with where that one was too. But we can adjust a little bit if we want to. Is it this one? Maybe it's this one. Okay. So I think lightening that just a touch, maybe, and then lightening this next one down just a touch. Like just doing that range, like we start losing a little bit of information here, but I think that this is kind of helping get that range. You may also even consider taking this a little bluer. So maybe not totally blue. You can pull out some of that, but so like keeping some of that in there, I think is really going to keep your entire range feeling a little bit more consistent. Now, my only other thing that I see at all in this is kind of what is happening here. Like in my head, I think that his hand is going to continue this line, but I think this is probably a shadow he's casting under here. And so some indication of that, even if it's just like a little bit of a spike that comes out here to complete sort of this imaginary line to the knuckle. And then some of what's going on here gets a little confusing to me. I don't necessarily know like where something's going on with his beard here, but I'm not sure what this is that's kind of getting in there. And I guess a very small nitpicky thing is I think if we had some really light indicating line that comes out of here just a little bit and aims at this line, we're going to connect that a little bit cleaner. So it doesn't. We don't have to have these big dropped areas here. I mean, that could be a whole line if you want it there. But I think if you just sort of traipse that out a little bit, I have a really thin line pointing toward that. And kind of the same thing here with the beard. Like the beard just kind of disappears into white. Maybe just a really slight line either here or here pointing up there, and just to get us some eye indicator to connect those imaginary lines. Otherwise, though, I think this is actually looking really good. So let's move on. Bethany. Okay, I think we talked about this one in class, if I'm not mistaken. You asked me about it. Did it open? Oh yeah, it's a little big. So give it a second. So my biggest note on this one is just in the hair. I actually think that you got a lot of really neat stuff going on in the jacket and the background. I'm a little confused about what's going on with her upper lip there. It kind of feels like it disappears, and so she's making sort of this open mouth shape, but you get this white line that goes all the way around it, and so it makes that top lip just feel kind of thin, and it's got like a little notch chopped out in it there. Otherwise, I actually really like her face. Her hair just feels a little somewhere between disheveled, like it's like she hasn't combed it, or it's like frizzy, and like 80s hair, like where everybody was just like teasing it and perming it and everything, and it got really kind of all over the place. I think what's causing most of this is the white sharp lines. So I don't know if you actually have any of this on the layer you can turn on and off. Seems to be quite a few layers. I'm not necessarily sure what they're going to each do, but hopefully if you have this, if you have all of the white in a layer, that'll be nice. But you may have just like, oh, it looks like you got the hair here. Yeah, what's this? Okay. There it is. Okay. So here's what I would consider. Selecting all of that. Alright, and so all these are uniform. Maybe put them like that. And so we're going to get a little bit more of a... did that work? Did not seem to work. Mixed. We're going to do all of them basic, and all of them this. And so I think that's going to help a little, because it's just going to feel a little less like everything is really like blunt lines. And then I think the other thing I would consider doing is playing a little bit with the blending of these, because I think you're wanting these to read as highlights. So if we set these to screen and maybe drop down the opacity a little, yeah, so we're getting a little less of the craziness. Now it's still like that causes some other problems. I think it pulls down some of your contrast, and so like it blends together a little bit right here. And so this maybe like here where the line or where the hair touches the jacket, that may need some more darkness. To kind of break up some of these shapes a little bit more. But I think the solution to this is that some of your lines need to be longer, sweepier lines than the short, sketchy ones, and that's what's making it feel kind of frizzy. Frizz is kind of those shorter hairs that kind of stand up and poke in all directions. So I think it needs a little bit more work on that, and I think it needs to push the contrast just a touch so we can break out some of the shapes of what's what. So is there a line that's sort of defining the edge of this jacket, or is that the edge of the jacket? So just kind of breaking those areas up just a little bit, I think would help. It gets a little this isn't the exact right term, but it gets a little gray. Like it's a little like all in the mid-tones, and we're not pushing enough into the darks in some of these areas. So a lot of this has just highlights and mid-tones, and I think we just need the darkest dark in there in a few spots to kind of let us know where the sort of the crevices are and the shadows are. Okay, so moving on. Carmen revised. Yeah, this looks right. So, actually, I like the style of this. I even like the headroom. Like, once you kind of explain that you wanted it to feel kind of heavy and lower, I feel like there's something that I still feel like I need up here, and I don't know what it is, even if it's just to keep him kind of boxed in, maybe a little bit of like vignetting or something. Because the only reason is it's not necessarily that I mind having this big empty area up here. It's that what that does now is it just gives us a bullseye composition with his face right in the middle. And so everything from his face down, I really like how that's working compositionally. It's this area up here just kind of pulls our focus in here and then pull our focus in here. Like this is the interest point because it's right smack in the middle. A lot of neat stuff here, not a lot of interesting here, and so we need to keep our eyes down here on this stuff. And so when you don't have anything up here at the top, my eye can kind of run off the page, and it just feels like this. I'm free to scamper about up here. Like if you kind of box this in a little bit with a little bit of a vignette, then maybe it'll, and not like a perfectly hard one, but maybe just like a little shadowing going on up here. Then I think that would pull our eyes back down in here and lead us, keep us focusing down here. So I think that you freehanded this, if I'm not mistaken, and I think you did really good at getting his likeness, especially on the eyes and this side of the mouth. There's something about this side of his face that feels like it's pushing forward. I think it's that the corner of his mouth here needs to go up and back a little bit more. And then I think that's what it is. If we look at the corner of his mouth and sort of the area around it, it feels like it's coming forward too much. And so that's just going to be some adjusting it to push that back. You can probably just go in here and do the select some of this area in here around his face and use the object envelope distort. Use the mesh version of it and just sort of pull some of that back up to get the. But you can kind of feel, if you look at it, you kind of feel like he's got something in his jaw there, like he's like, chewing some bubble gum or something. And I think it just kind of plays a little bit with our depth perception on that. Like it makes me feel like that part of his face is in a slightly different perspective than the rest of the illustration, which is staying in pretty good perspective. So that's my my main beef with it. We lose a lot of information in the tie and the jacket, and I very, very reluctantly say put a touch more detail in there. So I don't really mind it as much in the hair. But if you went in here and just like ever so often just put some very light like indicating lines, I don't even know which color to use because you probably don't want to use. You may be able to do it with this color because it's a little darker. I don't think you'll want to use the white, and I'm not 100% sure if this is the same color as this. Yeah, it is. So you probably you could just use that to just give us just a little bit of a hint of where some of these edges are. Just very light indications, not extremely hard. And that'll just kind of round off some of these forms in here. And right now they kind of feel like they're falling back into too much shadow. So just like a little rim light every now and then on it. So Cheyenne. Okay, so I actually like this and its style, I think that you're trying to play as much minimalism with these shapes as possible. The area that gets a little confusing to me is in this section of her nose. Like because we don't have any of this form in here to show us where this other nostril is, or where the little ball at the end of the nose is. It starts doing that kind of creepy Michael Jackson nose thing, where it feels like it's flattening out and being like these holes in her face. So I think you need a really some sort of indicator to let us know where that happens. And so now this feels like that line's just going to continue going straight down, not any indication of where this nostril might be. You get this really dark shadow here, and so that pulls my eye up there thinking that there's going to be a lot of shadowing on this side of the face, but then there really isn't. Let's see, is this black? That's dark green, I think. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You may have another color to spare, and if you do, then maybe that would be what I would recommend, is using a slightly darker shade of this green to get a little bit more volume in here. So I guess there's a way to find out in there. Let's select everything, edit colors, recolor artwork, and so you have 5. So you get another color to play with, I believe. Yeah. So you would have another color to play with, and so if you just made it, so we got, must be locked. This color of green, let me take my swatches, I'm going to drag it over here, deselect it. Maybe I would just make one that is something like that. Put this one over here. And then just very quickly, if I'm just going to wing this, even just a little bit of shadowing in this area. What happened to my swatch? Redo new swatch. Let's try that again. Sorry. Something like that. Done. That swatch. Pencil. Close that. Fill it with that color. That's probably too dark, so I would we're just wanting very slightly darker than what we already have. Maybe do that. Just a touch darker. So just even a shape like that, if we add some more of those in here to kind of round out some of her face, then we can use that to even indicate where edge of her nose is. And keep in mind, I'm just freehanding this as a very loose idea. Right, and just these little indications may give you a little bit more volume in the face, and I just feel like it flattens out a little too much because we get this color of green, this really stark white, and really dark, and there's nothing really kind of pulling any of that volume out. And I think you could do that and get some pretty neat results with it. So, Daniel, resubmit, Venom. So I think I recall this one, Daniel. Yeah. So you had turned off the outlines entirely, and I think you just need you need an in between there somewhere. It's not. I don't think having it completely off or having it completely on is the answer. also feel like some of this stuff you had going on in there earlier was looking pretty good. Make sure I'm looking at the right thing. So yeah, this is okay. So this is what you ended up turning in. I feel like you lose, like you had a lot of neat stuff going on in here with some of these shadows. So I wouldn't turn them completely off. I think this maybe gets a little too light. So if we just recolored it, like what you have here is actually looking pretty good to me. I just think that it needs another, I'm sure, let's see, turn everything on. And so I can select this shape. Oh, that's what we've got here. That's like the white poking through. And so like, if I go in here with a bob brush, and so instead of just having this completely stark line, maybe if it just kind of disappears into nothing periodically, this, see how we get that? And so going around here and kind of cleaning up all of this to get some of those nicer shapes may end up, you know, still keeping that outline, still kind of defining our edge there a little bit. You see, like it really trims it up. So I feel like that's what's going on. The line is just a little too dark right now, and it needs a little bit more of this, like just cleaning it up a little bit. The other thing I'd say is I feel like just overall the bob brush is a little sloppy in here. So one of the things that's really a really nice tool that I use is I just select the objects that I feel are getting a little too unruly on me, and I just use this smoothing brush here. So it's underneath the pencil, it's a smooth tool. I just drag along it and it'll just start simplifying my edges a little bit. And so this will really help with something if you're just feeling like it's not, like you get a lot of lumpiness in this, and I don't think of Venom as a very lumpy character. He's very smooth and like shadowy, right? And so I think just by doing a little bit of this, you're going to start getting some cleaner lines in here. Definitely like right in here. Okay, so this is just going to help you kind of clean up some of these shapes. I think we get that a lot of this jagginess, and so that would help just sort of tighten it all together. And I think we keep this feeling as blobby as it does. It would make this feel a little bit more crisp and interesting. So that'd be my 2 cents on it. I actually think the tongue is looking really gross and neat, but pretty solid work there. So. But I think it's just that white outline and kind of cleaning up some of the artwork still yet. Okay, Destin revision. Okay, so I think Destin, this is this one's a weird one for me because you got some really neat stuff going on up in here. Like all of the upper face stuff feels really kind of neat with the shadows and the eyes. Now you've chosen a very very distinct style with it, but it's kind of like there's a hard line to draw on whether what I'm seeing is a style decision or whether what I'm seeing is just sort of a difficulty getting the illustration to look the way you would want it to. So the areas where I feel like this is the most noticeable is just kind of this whatever's going on in the nose here, like this really dark line that kind of outlines the area that we think of as the nose region, right? And sort of this dark outline around the lips and in between all of the teeth. And so sometimes it just helps to go look at how these things really look, because we think of teeth as these individual squares in our mouth, and that's kind of how you drew them. We think of the nose as sort of this triangle shape on our face, and that's kind of how you drew it. The eyes are kind of these, you know, ellipse-shaped holes in our head, these little lines that are in our eyes. And so if those are conscious, like, decisions that you're making on how to illustrate that's one thing. But if it's just sort of a struggle that you're having with trying to get that look. Like, I don't feel like you're having that issue as much with some of the shadows, where you kind of looked at how the shadows fell on his face and just kind of added those in, and that worked really pretty well. So I'm going to pull some teeth over here so we can look at them. They're gigantic, so it's going to be a little scary at first. Here, let's see. There we go. So what we're actually seeing is I'm not able to really even see the line between the teeth right there. And it's not black, it's kind of almost indistinguishable. So it almost feels like that's just one solid piece right in the center there, right? Like right through there. And then we got these sort of like indicators in the top here. These teeth are really big, and they kind of look like they get thinner and thinner as they go back in the mouth. And also you'll notice that the edge around the top of our lip, even though we can draw lips in sort of a very distinct way, kind of gets soft around through here, right? This transition of color gets soft. So I think that that's what's kind of messing with the mouth to me, is that you're kind of drawing the idea of it, not sort of what you would see. And that's fine if that's a creative decision that you're doing to illustrate it that way. But I think that that's not necessarily how this is feeling. And I think the reason it's not feeling that way is that the lines sort of feel like they're lines to help you define that shape in order to communicate it. Whereas I think you could probably do more of like what you're doing here with the teeth, or like how you got these sort of jagged indicator shadows, like, oh, that's looking kind of neat, to indicate sort of where the teeth like go in and out of each other, to indicate maybe the mouth, maybe how you indicate this line that comes up through here is not a solid black line that's always the same width. Maybe it's a little crease there where he's like grimacing, and an indicator line that connects you to another line that's up here, but there's a little bit of a gap, and I don't know, it's just something to play with. I feel like it's still struggling in the nose-mouth area, whereas I think a lot of the stuff in the face, I even like the sort of stylized eyes, but I think that the mouth and nose just feels a little weird, and it kind of feels like they're pushing backwards into his face too, like they're a little bit recessed because of how dark this area is. So maybe pulling some of these highlights down in here to give us a little bit of relief from that would help as well. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's see where we're at here. Devin? Ignore. Okay, so Devin, this is I think this is looking pretty good. I think that for my money, I'm having a hard time kind of seeing what's going on under the eye here. So it feels like this area is needing a little bit of more information, and sort of the same in his mouth here. Like that feels like the areas where there's like what you got going on over here on the side of the cheek feels really good, right? Like all of this little like jaggedy pieces that kind of break that up. But then like the smaller versions of those that would happen in like the creases of the wrinkly spots don't really seem to be there. So there's not like little indicator lines around his eyes here to kind of add in those wrinkles. Like what happens with this line, which is apparently like a brow furrow here. Like it just kind of points and then disappears, and I feel like a little small line of indication through there somewhere would help. And the same with sort of like where his mouth splits. Like you got this dark line here in the shadow, but it never pops back up. And I think you have the colors to work with to be able to pull that off. So I think I would add just a little bit more of that just to kind of pull some of the detail into his face. I think your proportions are looking really good. You probably based this a lot off of one of the illustrations. But I think that would help. I also feel like this jacket and hat kind of, they get really smooth. So maybe just a little bit more indication of like some shadow or some texture in there would help a little bit. I wouldn't overdo it. I think his eyes look really good though, and so like the eyeball part, and I think this little like everything going on in this tie and neck feels really good. So I would just play with that a little bit more, because it just feels like I feel like we kind of start losing some of the really interesting details in the wrinkles, and it needs just a little bit more work in that. Emmy, let's see, final version. No, it's not. It's the revised, isn't it? Sorry. Canoes. Okay. Overall, this is looking better. I feel like the big issue with this one is proportion. I'm not necessarily seeing the right proportions in here, so it may just be a good idea to bring the picture in here in the background, kind of, we have to reshape some of this stuff to kind of get it in the right. His head just feels a little wide to me, and his shoulders feel a little high, and so I think that's the hard part, is getting that sort of right on. I think you're making some pretty neat decisions in the lines you choose here, but they're all kind of solid too. Like you have these like these solid shaped lines here. And I think having a little bit more, maybe a little bit more interest in that line, even if you have to bump up the size a little bit, would really help. So like that one, not so much, but stuff like this on the ear, that starts feeling very, it feels Illustrator, like it feels like something that Illustrator would draw. So this, like getting a little bit of taper on each end of that would really kind of help communicate those a little more clearly. And then I think there's just a handful of like cleanup stuff you need, like how these kind of cross over, just grabbing that, and sort of keeping that a little bit of a cleaner connection, so this is sort of the nitty-gritty, like getting in here and like doing the annoying little detail stuff, like how this line kind of has a little flat nick to it here. I think kind of rounding those together will really help. So I like that you kind of chose to go a little minimal. I think this dark line is just a touch too even across the bottom there. But I think the biggest thing right now is proportion. I think if you go in there and kind of get his proportions matching a little bit, use the envelope distort and maybe make it with a mesh, I think that'll really help. So I think I'm going to stop here for the first video. And mainly because I have to run to lunch before class, so I will get the second video recorded in a bit, and let me know if you have any questions, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.